Saying yes to sex that you're not particularly into is something that many of us have done. But there's a version of that yes that isn't really about sex at all. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. In today's video, we're exploring how that dynamic looks, why it develops, and its impact on our desire when it's left untended to over time. If you're new here, welcome. I'm Cindy Darnell, sex and relationship therapist working with all kinds of people in all kinds of relationship configurations all over the world. And on this channel, we have the conversations that many of us have in our heads, but not out loud. Here, we talk about relationships, desire, intimacy, connection, friendships, emotions, grief, and what gets in the way. So if that's what you're here for, you're in the right place. And let's get into it. Saying yes to sex that you're not especially into is, like I said, something that many of us have done, and it's not always a problem. Sometimes we're coming at it from a place of generosity, or sometimes from a place of curiosity. Sometimes you start out not feeling it, and then you find yourself glad that you did it. But there's another version which isn't really about sex at all, and that's the yes that's about keeping something else intact. The mood in the room, the warmth between you, the sense that everything between us is okay. Because for some of us, sex functions as a way of managing the emotional temperature of a relationship. Not through demands or threats, but because somewhere along the way, you learned that offering this particular thing reliably produces a kind of emotional and psychological peace. And this can be a type of fawning. And in intimate partnerships, sex is one of the places it shows up most easily, most invisibly, and most worth us bringing our curiosity to. Fawning is an emotional peacekeeping strategy. It's the learned reflex of tending to someone else's comfort in order to maintain our own sense of safety or connection. And it doesn't happen because we're weak or passive or without our own opinions, but because at some point in our lives, we learned that the most reliable way to feel okay in a relationship was to make sure that the other people felt okay first. Now, this shows up in lots of ways: agreeing when you don't, smoothing things over before conflict can develop, or performing enthusiasm you don't really feel. Saying what keeps the room light rather than saying what's true. And sex is simply one of the more effective tools available in that kit because, well, it works. And it produces closeness, or at least the appearance of it. It softens tension, it generates warmth and gratitude, and it temporarily answers the question that fawning is always trying to answer. Are we okay? While this might seem a useful strategy, and at one time it very likely was, in your now adult relationships, it's a strategy that probably no longer serves you, and if anything, it can keep you stuck in sexual situations you'd rather get out of, or change, or expand. And that's because sex occupies a particular position in intimate relationships where it sits at the intersection of our bodies, our desires, our vulnerability, and our relational meaning-making all at once. It carries an enormous social and emotional weight, doesn't it? And for that reason, it becomes a very efficient peacekeeping currency. There's also a structural dimension to this, especially for people socialized as women. The cultural conditioning around sex has long positioned us as the responsive party rather than the desiring one. And what I mean by that is to want can be complicated, but to be wanted and to meet that wanting, that is for many of us a sanctioned role. So we keep saying yes to keep things smooth, or saying no, or saying not right now, let's actually talk about what's going on, requires navigating something much more uncertain. So when you grow up inside that system, inside that architecture, alongside whatever your particular family and relational history added to it, you don't necessarily develop a strong internal compass around your own desire, but instead you develop a highly calibrated external one. And so you become especially skilled at reading what the relationship needs and providing it, which is useful, except when it comes at a price. So for some people who perhaps carry some anxiety or anxious attachment patterning here, the peacekeeping function of sex can take on an additional layer. When the baseline question running in a relationship is, are we okay? Do you still want me? Am I safe here? Sex then becomes one of the more reliable ways to temporarily get the answer of yes. Then a partner's desire becomes evidence of your value, right? Their satisfaction becomes proof that you are loved or at least wanted enough. The physical closeness produces a genuine sense of reassurance, even if what prompted the sex had nothing to do with desire and everything to do with that underlying feeling of anxiety. So when self-worth has been built on a foundation of conditional approval, or when love feels like something you had to earn and keep earning, then sex can become one of the primary arenas where that earning happens. The body becomes an ongoing demonstration of your worth, and then your yes functions as insurance against your partner's withdrawal. I hope this is making sense. Now, here is where it gets genuinely more complicated and more interesting, because not everything that looks like fawning is only fawning. Some people find that the dynamic of pleasing, of being responsive and available and attuned to a partner's desire is, in itself, very erotic. The attentiveness, the submission, the watching someone else's desire move through them, these can be genuinely arousing and in no way a pathology or something that needs to be undone. And this is because desire frequently, but not always, organizes itself around the relational and emotional material that shapes who we are. The places where need and fear and longing all intersect are often exactly the places where arousal lives. So a person who grew up learning that their value lay in attending to others may find a real erotic charge in exactly that dynamic, which matters as we gather data about our own erotic templates when we're looking for information about our own desires, but not as symptoms of a pathology to be corrected. The distinction that matters isn't the act or acts themselves, or even the dynamic. It's the degree of awareness and the choices that we make inside it. If this is resonating for you, I want to invite you to just take a moment. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable, or just slightly drop your gaze. Take a deep breath into your belly, and then a big exhale out your mouth, twice as long as the inhale. And let's try this again. In through the nose, and then a long exhale out through the mouth. And as you ground yourself here with me, I want to invite you to consider these questions from this grounded and centered place. Is this a role that you can enter in and step out of? Is it something that you bring to a relationship from a place of knowing what you want, or at least some of the time? Or is it the only register available to you, regardless of context, regardless of what you actually feel? Allow the answers to rise within you and resist the temptation to judge them or change them. Just simply notice what they are, and then slowly open your eyes and come back to me. Conscious erotic surrender and the habit of erasing ourselves sexually can look identical from the outside, but they don't feel identical from the inside. One involves a kind of gentle presence, while the other involves a kind of managed absence. Fawning in sex tends to work well enough in the short term, but poorly over the long term. Not because it's harmful in a dramatic sense, but because it's a way of avoiding the more difficult work of actually knowing and communicating how you feel and what you want. Now, it's important to remember that that avoidance is understandable. Saying, I don't really want sex right now, but I want to talk to you about why I've been feeling distant from you is a much harder conversation than having sex and just letting the tension dissolve temporarily. The fawning solution is faster and more reliable and less risky. It doesn't require you to tolerate the uncertainty of asking for what you need or the vulnerability of naming what's actually going on. But what it also doesn't do is address what's actually going on. So over time, a relationship where sex regularly functions as the emotional pressure valve tends to become one where the underlying feelings never really get a chance to be aired. The tension dissolves enough that it never quite demands to be looked at, and desire, when it's been consistently recruited into peacekeeping rather than actual hunger, can start to feel thin. So to move away from sexual fawning, it doesn't start with forcing yourself to say no or overhauling how you relate to your partner overnight. That is going to feel too much. But it starts much earlier and much more quietly and gently with curiosity about your own inner world. What are you actually feeling when you reach for sex or when you agree to it? Is there wanting in there alongside the peacekeeping? Ask yourself that. Or is there resentment alongside your generosity? Or is there relief? Perhaps genuine pleasure or a mix of all of it in there? Most people who have been using sex as an emotional management tool, especially for a really long time, might have complicated answers to these questions, especially if they slow down long enough to really hear these answers. Sitting with that complexity, rather than bypassing it with a simple yes or no, is really the essence of this work and where the more interesting inner territory work begins. A useful question to bring to your own experience is less, what do I want? Which can feel impossibly open when you're not used to asking it, but more, how do I want sex to make me feel? And if you need some support with that, I have another video on this channel that helps you really address this question in a much more textured way. I'm going to link it in the description below. So asking ourselves, how do I want sex to make me feel? How do I want to feel broadly in sex, in my relationships, in my body? Connected, seen, playful, free, present. This is a different kind of self-knowledge, and it starts to build something internal to orient from, rather than reading the room and adjusting yourself accordingly. It doesn't require you to stop being responsive or generous or attuned to your partner, but it does require that you also be somewhere in the picture, centered, present enough that the sex is something you're actually in, rather than just a service that you are providing. It's a small shift in the frame, but it really opens up a lot for so many of us who are struggling with this. I really hope this video has given you a little bit of something to think about, and if you would like a bit more support with any of the topics that I discuss here, head on over to my website, cindydarnell.com. There you'll find lots of different ways to work with me, from counseling and coaching with individuals, couples and polycules, online all over the world. Also, you'll find my book, Sex When You Don't Feel Like It, The Truth About Mismatched Libido and Rediscovering Desire, which is very much in the context of our discussion today. You'll also find my online courses in the Intimacy Lab, where you can work from home at your own pace, learning more about how your body works and how our relationships work and how our feelings work to have richer connections and much more meaningful sex. Let me know in the comments below, how did this video land for you? What did it make you think about? And what surprised you? Please go ahead and share this with anyone you think might find this useful. And of course, remember to like and subscribe. That is how we teach the algorithm that this content is worth watching. I love making these videos for you. Thanks for hanging out here, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.